Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? All right, awesome. I'm just going to give a few more minutes just for everyone to come in here. Some stragglers usually just show up around 11 o'clock, or 11:30 rather. So I'm just going to give it about a minute or two left, and then we'll begin shortly. All right, the time is now 11:32, and I'm just going to go ahead and begin. And I assume as people come in, they won't be missing too much. At the beginning is just a little bit of preamble. But hello, everyone, and good morning, and welcome to the AirWatch Webinar. My name is Brandon, and I've been with the Client Service Desk for about 2 years. And over to the left of me, you cannot see her or hear her, but she will be fielding the chat room. Her name is Israt, and any questions that she can answer that are relatively quick, she will answer them in the chat room that you see on the right-hand side. And anything that sort of needs to be taken away and moved to the end of the webinar rather, we will do that at the end, and if it requires a more detailed response. But if you do have any quick questions, please feel free to jot them down in the chat. She may be able to answer them for you right away. Otherwise, we'll have to address it during the Q&A period at the end of the webinar. So just as we begin, before we begin, I just want to show some things here. Before we begin, webinar is recorded, and it will be available at the end of this webinar using the same YouTube link that you guys are watching from right now. So this entire webinar is basically being recorded, and as soon as it's done, the same URL you're using will allow you to watch it again. Also, there is about a 10-second delay between the time that I say something and it makes it to your ears through your speakers. So if something is said in the chat room and I don't address it right away, that may be why. Also, feel free to ask questions in the chat. Like I said, I have Israt here next to me. She will be fielding the chat room and answering any questions as we go along. Also, there is a quality setting in YouTube that you can adjust. So if you find that the text is a little bit too blurry or it's not quite clear, you can change the quality in the bottom right-hand corner by clicking the gear icon and going over to quality. And then you'll see some more options near the top for a more HD quality. So there's 720p and 1080p. Those are the highest quality ones. Although bear in mind when you do switch to an HD quality, it might increase the latency. So there might be a little bit of a delay in terms of hearing my voice. But at least it'll be clearer that way. Or you can traverse, through the different settings, however you find it appropriate for you. Also, just next to the volume control at the bottom, there is a little icon that says live. If you see that the dot is gray, it means that it's actually back a few seconds. So if you actually click where it says live, you should see a red dot appear, and that'll mean that you're on the most up-to-date or the livest version possible of this stream, just so that you're hearing it in real time or as close to real time as possible. So I'm just going to go over the objectives really quick of what we intend to do here. So we're going to be attempting to familiarize the schools with AirWatch and managing iPads. We intend to highlight the key benefits of AirWatch for you guys at a school level. And we will also be trying to demonstrate how you'll be using AirWatch in your school. So a real-life example of how you would deploy apps to multiple iPads, etc., etc. So let's begin with what is AirWatch. So AirWatch is a mobile device management system or an enterprise mobility management system. The two terms are interchangeable. They can be referred as either or. basically they refer to the same idea. You have a centralized place for configuring and managing mobile devices, and that's where AirWatch comes in. The benefits of AirWatch include that it will allow automatic TDSB wireless network access to the WLAN TDSB01 wireless network. So prior to AirWatch, we had to join either TDSB staff, which is now gone. It's now TDSB-Wi-Fi, which requires you to put in like your employee number and password or student number and password, and it's not ideal when you have a bunch of iPads. You don't want people to be logging into the Wi-Fi. So with AirWatch, it allows access to the WLAN with no credentials, so you won't have to worry about typing in any username or password with AirWatch to join the Wi-Fi. And it should stay on WLAN TDSB01, so you won't find it will switch or anything like that. And so it should have network connectivity at all times. It also allows for easy app installation for multiple iPads. So prior to AirWatch, you would have to pick up every iPad, sign into the App Store, use your your Apple ID or your Mobile G account, as you may be familiar with, to find and locate and download an iPad. With AirWatch, what we do is we load apps into AirWatch, and then we can push out the apps en masse to however many iPads you want. So if you have, let's say, 20 iPads, you could have, an app and push it out to all 20 in one single click from a single web interface of AirWatch. There's also a consistent experience between iPads based on your configuration. So if you see an iPad that has AirWatch on it, you will notice that it has a blue background, and at the lock screen, it also has the TDSB logo. So the look and feel will be consistent across the board with our iPads, and it sort of signifies that it's a TDSB iPad that way. There's also built-in security policies, which will prevent students from adding or removing apps. So the App Store is effectively quote-unquote gone, as well as they won't be able to put a passcode on the device. One of the biggest one of the more frequent calls that we have at the client service desk is students will have gotten on the iPad, they'll go into settings, and then they'll put a passcode on the device, and then they don't tell the teacher what the passcode is. And trying to guess the passcode will, after I believe 10 or so attempts, basically disable the iPad, which means now that the iPad will have to be wiped. So AirWatch right out of the box will not allow you to put a passcode on the device. So that deals with that problem, as well as they don't have the ability to go to the App Store and download apps that aren't approved. Everything is done wirelessly, so remote wireless configuration and updates. If you wish to push out apps to them, or if you wish to configure your iPads or do anything sort of along those lines, it's all done over Wi-Fi. So you don't have to plug it into a computer. You don't need iTunes. It's all done over Wi-Fi. And also, it removes the requirement for the Apple ID. So the Apple ID prior to this obviously required, that you would type in the number dash mobile G Apple ID account in order to purchase or even download an app. The Apple IDs, we're trying to retire them, so that's sort of the goal here with AirWatch, is that you can push the apps through AirWatch and not have to sign in, remember a password, or share a password amongst, the staff at the school. So, who can log in? By default, all principals and AirWatch administrators can log in. Given that you're all here in the webinar, part of the process before we invited you to the webinar was to have your principal select an AirWatch administrator. And the AirWatch administrators are probably you guys here. You've been selected, and you were effectively added into AirWatch through LAS. So your principal can use LAS on the desktop, in the school folder on the desktop, and from there they can add you in as a administrator for AirWatch. Now bear in mind, if you go into LAS and try to add somebody in as an AirWatch administrator, it could take around 12 to 24 hours before you actually have access to the console. But you should, I believe you receive an email notification by the time you have access to the AirWatch console. So this demo, what we're going to cover is navigating the AirWatch console, so getting familiar with the interface and the look and feel of it. We're going to go over organizing your iPads using smart groups. So this is how the product AirWatch will take your iPads and put them into logical groups, and then you can apply apps to those groups. And then part of this demo, we're also obviously going to be adding and removing apps and web clips to the iPad. Now a web clip, just really quick, is basically like a bookmark. It's like a URL that looks like an app on your iPad. But we're going to demonstrate that, and you'll see later on. So logging into AirWatch. With AirWatch, you can log in from anywhere on the web, not just within the TDSB. It is a cloud-based application. It doesn't matter what browser you're using. You use Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Internet Explorer. It's totally up to you. It's pretty much working on all browsers as far as we know. There is an important thing to note when you're signing in, and I don't know if you can see it there, but the username format. We get a lot of calls, people trying to log in, and they type in their employee number and password, and it doesn't let them in. Basically, you need to put the prefix TDSB / and then your employee number for the username. So TDSB / employee number and then your password. And when you're logging in for the first time, it will ask you to create a 4-digit PIN. The 4-digit PIN is effectively used for a verification of a next security step. So say, for example, if I wanted to wipe a device, to prevent me from wiping a device accidentally, it will ask me to type in my 4-digit PIN before I actually wipe the device. It's sort of like a last ditch, are you sure you want to do this? Type in your 4-digit PIN to confirm. The link is right there. It's also in the in the description section of this stream to the AirWatch environment. It's a long cryptic URL, https://cn239.awmdm.com. So if you wanted to follow along, you could open up a new tab and maybe open that up, and you can try and log in yourself. But I'll be demonstrating from my point of view what I see on this end. So I'll be logging into the AirWatch console here, and you can follow along. So when you're logging in for the first time, you may actually see that there's a terms of agreement that comes up. You can read it if you want. Wouldn't recommend it, but go ahead. If you see the terms of agreement, just click accept, and then you will be prompted to create your 4-digit PIN. Once you create your 4-digit PIN, if at any moment you forget what your 4-digit PIN is, you can always change it from the settings, and we at the client services we'll be glad to help you through that. But if this is the first time you're logging in, it'll prompt you to create a 4-digit PIN. So with that, I'm actually just going to jump right into the console. Let's get acquainted with this right away. Let me just open up a new AirWatch console here just so that I can show you the login process. So this is AirWatch. Again, the link is up here at the top, or down in the description of the video. For the username format, like I mentioned earlier, we want to type in TDSB / and then our employee number. The TDSB is not case sensitive. You can do lowercase TDSB, you can do uppercase TDSB, you can do uppercase and lowercase. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't matter. As long as you have TDSB / and then your employee number, it should work fine. And now the password is your current network password. So the same one you use to access your email, the same one you use to log into a computer. It's the same credentials that you use to log in to AirWatch. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and type mine in. Oops, that was not it. The PIN is not something that you would share with your school administrator. The PIN is specific to you. So everybody who logs into AirWatch has to create their own PIN. I'm obviously not being prompted to create my PIN here because I have already created a PIN. But that PIN is unique to you. So that's just something like if I, for example, wanted to wipe a device, it would say enter in your PIN, and that PIN belongs to you. So yeah, it's your own PIN. You don't have to share that. Getting back there, when you first log in, the first screen that you'll end up on is devices and dashboard. Now, just quickly, there's not a lot to cover with the dashboard other than what it is just basically a graphical overview of your devices. So it's sort of like a breakdown statistically of all your devices that you have in the AirWatch environment. So all these charts here that you see are actually interactive. It's sort of if you hover your mouse over it, you'll see that some of the graphics will actually change colors. And effectively what it is, it allows you to click these figures here, and it will take you over to a list of your devices and show you exactly what it is that this statistic is referring to. So one that I like to show, for example, down here is the last seen breakdown. So the last seen breakdown will basically tell you the last time that your devices came online and checked into AirWatch. So when your devices, or your iPads rather, come online and you use them, they basically, the first thing they should be doing is talking to AirWatch, and it'll report into AirWatch, and it'll say, "Hi, I'm here," and basically tell AirWatch that it's alive. With the last seen breakdown, it'll show you that, for example, how many iPads have been seen in 0 to 3 days, 4 to 7 days, 8 to 15, 16 to 30. And with these little graphs here, you can actually delve in and see exactly what it is referring to. So for example, if I see that one here shows that it has been seen in 0 to 3 days, I can click there and it will take me over to a list of my devices. And in the device list here, it'll show me exactly what it is those devices it was referring to in that graph. So all the devices that you see here have actually been seen in the last 0 to 3 days. And you can actually see that based on this last seen column here. For example, 60 minutes, 39 minutes, 3 hours, 8 hours. It falls in that 0 to 3 day threshold. So that's what the dashboard really is. It just sort of, again, it just statistically breaks down some interesting things about your devices, such as, how many Apple devices do you have, how many Android. You probably don't have any Android devices right now, but down the road we will be incorporating Android devices into AirWatch. And again, all these charts are interactive, so when you click the figures, it'll take you over to the list of the devices that it's referring to. With the last seen breakdown, if you notice that you have some devices that have been seen in, for example, 16 to 30 days, that means that those devices haven't been online and haven't talked to AirWatch in 16 to 30 days. So you might want to click that figure, see which devices it's referring to, and then you can go about trying to track down what those devices are, where are they, and how come they haven't been online in that time. Are they lost? Are they stolen? I don't know, but it's worth investigating from the dashboard. So that's really just the dashboard. You can kind of look through it on your own time and see that the different statistics it's referring to. Just gives you a breakdown of your environment. But with that, I'm going to switch over to the list view, which we briefly saw when I clicked the last seen breakdown. So in the list view, as it suggests, the list view contains a list of all your devices that appear in AirWatch. So I'm assuming you guys are pretty familiar with the enrollment process at this point. Sorry, I just seen the chat now. What does talk to AirWatch mean? Basically, when I say talk to AirWatch, I mean when the device comes online, because AirWatch is running on the device at all times, it's basically trying to communicate with the AirWatch server. So it's sort of just reporting in. It's saying, hello, I'm here and I'm alive, right? So if a device hasn't, quote unquote, talked to AirWatch in a significant amount of time, it might suggest that, that there's something wrong with that iPad. Maybe it's not connecting to the network. Maybe it's lost or stolen. That's sort of what I mean by that. But back over to list view. In the list view, it shows you all your iPads that are currently enrolled in your environment. So as you're enrolling devices into AirWatch, they should appear here. You'll notice some of them have some long cryptic names. So just as a side note, I recommend that as you're enrolling devices and you see them come up in your list, you might want to rename them as you're doing it, because as you enroll a device, it's going to come in with this long name, and it may not be meaningful to you. So as they come in, you probably want to rename them. So you'll enroll one, rename it to your own naming convention, like Library 1, Library 2, iPad 4, Grade 5, iPad 5, whatever it is that you guys decide to track and label your iPads. You would probably want to name it at the moment that it comes into AirWatch. And I'll show you how to rename a device as this progresses. But for now, what you need to know is just on the devices and the list view, these are all the iPads that you see in your environment. And in the list view, it just sort of gives you a little breakdown of some general information regarding the iPads. So for example, it shows you, that what generation it is, what the space is on the device, or what version of iOS is running. And just shows you a brief statistic about the iPads. So that's really the list view. All these iPads, you can actually click and go into them, and it will take you into details view. So for example, I'm just going to pick the iPad that I have here next to me. Which is this long cryptic one here, and I should probably rename it, and I will rename it just for the sake of the demonstration here. But this is the iPad that I actually have next to me. I'm going to click here. Yes, you can change the name of an iPad. You can change it as many times as you want. So if you don't like it later on down the road, you can do that. So by clicking the device, it has brought me from the list view, so the list of all my devices, into a details view. So now I've shifted my focus from a list of all the devices in my environment to just this one single iPad. And in the details view, it just sort of gives you some more information regarding this device. A lot of the information we saw on the list view is also here. So for example, what's the model of the iPad, how much space is there, the version number of iOS, and just on the side, the serial number. So when you're renaming devices, this serial number field can actually be valuable in making sure that the iPad that I have with me that I'm about to rename is the one that I'm looking at right now. So I can match up that serial number before I rename it, just to make sure that I'm renaming the correct one. It also shows some other information, how much storage capacity is there, the memory, and whether or not there's an available OS update for it. So just really some summary information here. There's also the Apps tab. That's a pretty important one to note. So as we go through the webinar, I'm going to show you how to deploy an app to your iPads. Any app that is designated to be installed on this particular iPad will show here in the Apps tab. It'll either show that the app is installed or that an app should be installed. So in the case here, I can see that there's the agent and there's Google Sheets. Now I'm looking at the status here and it's got this little gray icon. It says it's not installed. So we'll see what's going on with that later on down the road. But basically this iPad is supposed to have Google Sheets installed on it. And I can see here just by looking at the apps that it does not. So we can go and investigate from there. But that's the idea of the Apps tab. It shows you what apps you have chosen to be installed and whether or not they are installed. So I'm going to switch back to the Summary tab, and I just want to show you from the Details view how to rename a device. So there's actually two ways you can rename a device, actually. Sorry, let me switch back. I'm going to go to Details view. Or sorry, List view, rather. So with Details view, we're focusing on one iPad. If we go over to the List view over here on the top left-hand side, it'll bring us back to our list of iPads. And let's say I wanted to rename my iPad from here. I can do that by clicking this little pencil icon. And that pencil icon will bring up this Edit Device menu. And from here, I can rename the iPad as well. So it's really up to you how you want to rename it. You can do it by looking at your list and clicking the pencil. Or I can always actually just click the iPad, which will take me again to Details view. And I'll show you there's a little tab at the top right-hand corner that says More Actions right up here. Right-hand side. It's kind of small. I hope you can see it. But if I click More Actions, there's an option here to Edit Device, and that is basically Edit Device is renaming the iPad. So for example, if I had an iPad and I had recently enrolled it, and I want to name it something that's meaningful to me, I can do it from here and just verify that the iPad that I have in my hand, the serial number matches up over here on the right-hand side, and then I can go More Actions and rename the device by clicking Edit Device. So here's the thing about AirWatch is when you first enroll a device, it's going to come in with this long cryptic name as we see here. So it's a combination of the model of the iPad and this unique identifier that's really long and cryptic. At any rate, it's not helpful when I'm looking at a list of my iPads which one this is. So it's very important that we rename our iPads in a way that is meaningful for us. So in the case of this webinar, I'm just going to pretend this hypothetical situation where I have a cart of iPads in the library, and the iPad that I have in my hand has a sticker on it and it's labeled number 2. So for example, when I'm looking at my list of devices in AirWatch, if I have it named something more meaningful, I'll be able to then better manage it down the road. So for example, I'm going to call this iPad, let's see, Library Cart, and what did I say? It was number 2. Library Cart and number 2. So by naming it this, when I go to look at my list of devices, rather than that long serial number, which doesn't mean anything to me, it doesn't tell me that this iPad is the iPad that I have in my hand, by renaming it this, I'll be able to more effectively see which iPad that is to me. So I've changed the name from Library Cart to Library Cart number 2. There's also a little checkbox I just want to quickly show you over here. It says Set Friendly Name as Device Name. So by checking off this checkbox, what it does is it'll take the name that I've chosen up here, and it'll actually push it on the device. So on the iPad, and actually I have the iPad here, I'll just show you really quick. If I go over to settings, and then I go to general, and then about, there is a name of an iPad. For example, right now it's named the default iPad. Again, not very meaningful. However, if I go back to AirWatch and I choose library cart number 2 and I set the friendly name as the device name, what should happen is it's going to rename not only the device in AirWatch so that this name up here at the top, you'll see it quickly switch over from 3, 4, E0, blah, 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 over to library cart dash number 2. Oh, by the way, AirWatch sometimes has a little spinning wheel. It's just sort of based on network latency. But now I can see that the iPad is now named library cart number 2. And by clicking that checkbox that I showed you to set the friendly name as a device name, if I go back over to my iPad and I go into settings and then general and then about, we can see that the name of the iPad is also named here. So that'll actually also even help you even further with identifying that this iPad is the one that I'm seeing in AirWatch. So that's naming a device, very important. Like I said, as you're bringing devices in and enrolling them into AirWatch, you want to rename them. I would rename them literally. I would enroll one and rename it, because that way you won't get confused. Because if you enroll like 20 at a time, they're all going to come in and they're all going to have the name iPad, and then it's going to be a little bit cumbersome to figure out which serial number belongs to which iPad that's literally just named iPad. So I would recommend enrolling one, renaming it, enrolling another, renaming it. That's sort of the feedback I've heard from other users that have already adopted AirWatches. That's how they prefer to do it. But again, it's entirely up to you. So that's Details View, the Summary tab. We have renamed a device. It's, again, very important to rename your devices. There's some actually more things we can do from the More Actions tab up here. I'm just going to quickly highlight that. So we showed you More Actions, Edit Device. And that was, again, to rename the device. It brings up this menu here. But under More Actions, there's also some additional things we can do here, such as clearing the passcode. Now, that would remove the passcode from the device, but by default, we don't have passcodes set on the device. So it's not really not something you can use right now, but there is a way to put a passcode on the device, and I'll show that later. But from Clear Passcode, right here under Clear Passcode Device, it'll actually, if you had to set a passcode on the device, like to unlock it, you could then clear it so that, you know, if you forgot what the passcode is, rather than having to wipe it, you can just wipe the passcode entirely. There's also the device wipe over here. This will perform a factory reset on the device, bring it back to its vanilla state. With AirWatch, the good thing about it is that we can actually kind of wipe devices pretty liberally, because they will come back and join AirWatch automatically, just having to go through the enrollment process, which I'm hoping you're all familiar with, because I don't think we're going to have time to cover actually enrolling a device. But all the information is available on the MDM page, which I'll show you the link at the end of this webinar. But we can actually wipe the device from AirWatch, which will allow us to start fresh. So if you have any problems with an app and you just kind of want to start from the beginning again, you can use the device wipe over here. And like I mentioned, that 4-digit PIN code, I'm just going to click. I'm not going to wipe my device just because I'm going to need my device for the actual webinar. But when I go to wipe a device, it's going to prompt me to type in that 4-digit PIN code here. So that's the one that I created. So if I typed in my PIN code, it would go through. In this case, I typed in it wrong, so it wouldn't go through. But that's the idea of the PIN code, is that there's certain tasks that will require that PIN code that you created. Under More Actions, apart from device wipe, clearing the passcode, and renaming the device, another one that you may find useful is the iOS update. So if your iPad is due for an update, so for example, I think the latest version, and there was an update not too long ago that just came out, I think, what is it? We're at 10 point something, 10.2? 10.2.1. If there was an iOS update available, I could choose iOS update from here, and it will force the iPad to do its update, usually right away, depending on the network speed. And also, as far as iOS updates go, you can also choose if you wanted to do en masse, you wanted to have multiple iPads do that update at a given time. You can actually do it from the list view here as well too. So you can select your different iPads over here, and then under More Actions, you can do an iOS update. So I can queue up multiple iPads and queue up multiple iPads to update to the latest version of iOS through this method. I'm just going to go back here to my library cart number 2. And the last one I want to show for the More Actions tab up here is what's known as lost mode. So if in the event that you lose an iPad, you can enable lost mode. And effectively what lost mode does is it makes the iPad unusable. So it'll lock the iPad completely down to a screen with a message of your choosing, and you basically won't be able to interact with it. So the idea is that if I lost an iPad and somebody were to find it, I could put a message to retrieve it. So I'll just do a quick example for you. With the message here, I could say, I have lost this iPad. Please return to Mr. Silva in room 100. And then I can include even a phone number if I wanted to. And I'm not sure what the footnote does because it doesn't really show on the message, but I'll just leave that blank. But the idea is that once I send this, what's going to happen is it's going to lock down my iPad entirely. And I'll just show you. I can switch over to my iPad here. This is what I see. And now if I press the home button, it doesn't do anything. If I try to swipe left or swipe right, it doesn't do anything. The iPad is effectively, it's locked to this. I can turn it off and turn it back on again, and it'll always be stuck on the screen. And again, if it's left in like a drawer somewhere and somebody were to pick it up, the idea is that they would see this message and go, oh, I should probably return this to, Mr. Silva in room 100. And then once the iPad is returned, you can actually go back into your More Actions tab here. And this Enable Lost Mode will show Disable Lost Mode. It's still showing Enable Lost Mode because I haven't refreshed the page, but I'll do that now, and we'll see that when it loads, that Enable Lost Mode now shows Disable Lost Mode. So in the event that the iPad has now returned to me, it's been accounted for, I can click Disable Lost Mode, and that'll make my iPad usable again. So if I switch back over to my iPad, you'll see the message. It should say iPad located. Now, every time we do the webinar, we notice that this thing actually has a tendency of once we disable Lost Mode that it basically doesn't reflect the message here. But on the iPad itself, it's basically usable again. Let me just see if I can join that back to the webinar here. Of course. All right, well, I'm not going to mess around too much with this. I'll get it to join the webinar shortly. So that was enabling, so we covered editing a device, which is to rename a device. We covered the option of clearing a passcode. Again, there is no passcodes on the device, but there is an option if we did set a passcode. There's a device wipe, there's the iOS update, and those are the enable lost mode. So those are the more common things you'll probably be using under the More Actions tab over here. So with that, we're actually just going to jump right into creating a smart group because effectively I'm going to try to walk you guys through how it is that we deploy apps to an iPad. So if I go over, sorry, I guess I should preface this with, in order to push apps to iPads, what we need to do is actually group all our iPads into what is known as a smart group. And smart groups will contain a list of your choosing of the iPads that you want. And then what you do is you take your apps and you apply it to the group. So every iPad in the group gets the app. I hope that makes sense. You group your iPads, apply an app to the group, and then the iPads in that group effectively get the app. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to create a smart group. So how we create a smart group is we go over here to Groups and Settings. And over here, we're going to click Groups. And then we're going to go down to Assignment Groups. Do not go to Organization Groups. Just as a little detail, organization groups are just like little folders, and they don't have any meaning for us here. All our organization groups are already set up, so we're only going to go to assignment groups down here. And in assignment groups, this is where we will create a smart group. And like it shows right there, to create a smart group, what we're going to use is the Add Smart Group button. So the Add Smart Group button will bring up a menu where we can group all our iPads into them. I can see that I already have some smart groups that are already listed here. You can see under the group type, it shows that these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these 7 or so groups here are all smart groups. And it'll even break down how many devices are in them. You can see that by the devices column. So I can already give a quick detail about the smart group, you know, how many devices are in it. And then the assignments are how many things are applied to that smart group. So in this case, I could assume that there's about 4 or so either apps or web clips or something that's applied to that smart group. But I'm going to demo creating our smart group. We're going to create one from scratch, and we're going to apply apps to it, and we're going to add the iPad that I have there to it. So I'm going to click the Add Smart Group button. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring up a new window that will allow me to create the smart group. By default, when you click Create New Smart Group, it's going to take you to a screen to where it says Select Criteria. This is sort of the tab that we're on. And we're not going to be creating smart groups based on criteria. So just really quick, what the Select Criteria is a way of grouping your iPads based on conditions. So I could say, you know, all my iPads that are of a certain model or of a certain version of iOS would apply to this group. So it's more of like a dynamic group. It can change and it can add depending on conditions. Not really useful in our environment because we want to group them based on their name and their types. So what we do is, how we create our smart groups is by default we switch from select criteria over to select devices or users. Now, by going to select devices or users, we're going to actually be able to add in our devices based on their name, so how that they appear in our AirWatch. So this is why I said it's actually very important to rename your devices to something that's meaningful to you, because when you get here and it comes time to actually create a smart group, it's going to ask you to pick your smart group from the list. And if I don't know which iPad is the one that I want to be added to this list, it's going to be a little bit difficult to add it to the group. You know, for example, I see 2 here that weren't renamed. They're iPad, and I don't know. Maybe that's the iPad that's on the top floor. Maybe that's one in the basement. I don't know which one to add. But in the example of me renaming my iPad to Library Cart number 2, I could now see that, okay, this is the iPad that I want to have the set of apps that I intend to deploy. So I'm going to choose my iPad here. And then I'm going to click the Add button, and it's going to move over to the Devices and Smart Groups section. So now this iPad has been added in to the smart group. So then I would want to give my smart group a name that's meaningful. So if this is my Library Cart iPad, labeled number 2, let's assume that my smart group, I'm going to call it Library Cart. So then when it comes time to deploy apps, I'm going to deploy all the apps that I want for all my iPads that are part of my Library Cart. So I'm just going to put the one iPad in there for now, but you could add multiple. I could pick from the list here again, and you know, there's another one here, and you can click Add. So you can add as many as you want. The list will just keep growing and growing as they. Oh, sorry, I already selected that one. And you can add, you know, multiple in there. Sorry, And once you have all the iPads that you want in the list, you can just click Save. In this case, I'm going to take these other 2 out, and how I would do that is just click these little check boxes here, and it should remove them from the list even on the right-hand side. So I'm just going to stick with one for this example. I'm going to have my Library Cart number 2 iPad as part of my smart group, which is called Library Cart. And I'm going to click Save. So now I see that there is my Library Cart smart group that I've created. And again, just some brief information over here, such as the assignments and the device number. So I can see it's got one iPad in there. So with that, I have my group. I have my iPad that is part of my group. Now we're going to deploy an app to that smart group. So to deploy an app, we're going to switch over to Apps and Books on the left-hand side. And then you'll see some little sub-menus here. Under Applications, it's by default going to go to List View. And we're going to see these 2 tabs, Purchased and Web. The Purchase tab is where all our apps are going to be. The Web tab is where we're going to create web clips. And I'll explain in a little bit what the web clip is. I think I already briefly mentioned it. But by default, we're going to end up in the Purchase tab. And in the Purchase tab, this is where our apps are. Now, when we first get here, we see that the list of apps here are showing a bunch of icons here that aren't really meaningful, and they don't really say the name of the app. So to see the list of apps that apply to our environment, we actually need to search for our school name. And our school name, a school name or school number. So your school Trillium number, the same one you used to enroll devices. So in the case of my test school, I could search for the apps that apply to my school. So I can do test school. And what will happen is it'll take this list that applies board-wide and filter it down to just the apps that are applied to my environment. And these are all the apps that I see here that are applied to my environment. I guess this is a good time to mention how is it that these apps got here. Why do I only see these ones? Because this isn't a real-time look at the App Store. You basically have to submit an app request form in order for your apps to appear here. So you don't have sort of like an open access to the App Store. What you do is you submit the app request form to it goes to Teaching and Learning, and then Teaching and Learning will pass it off to our app admin department, and then they load it into your environment. I'll just quickly show you. So at the top tab here, I've already opened up the app request form. We actually recently changed it. Not too long ago, it allowed you only to add one app at a time, and that was not very helpful. But we've expanded on the new app request form. It sort of breaks down exactly how the whole process works. So if you wanted a paid app, you would specify, your school's cost center and general ledger number. And by submitting the form, we can actually get a better discount, because if you're ordering a paid app and another school is ordering a paid app and then another school is also ordering that same paid app, rather than doing 3 individual orders, we could bulk them together into one big order and then receive a significant discount. So that's why we do it through the app request form for paid apps and as well as free apps. So in order for free apps to appear in the environment, we need to submit the app request form. So once you submit the app request form, it can take about 10 days for the app to show up in your environment. So that's assuming there's not any billing issues, as we see here. And you will receive an email confirmation once the app appears in your AirWatch environment. And if at any moment you believe there's something wrong, what's the status of it, you can always email apprequests@tdsb.on.ca, and they will tell you the status of your app request. But basically, you just fill out your name, your role, your email, the school, what type of app. Do you want a free app, a paid app? And, you would choose AirWatch in this case. And with this new app request form, you can fill out as many apps as you want. So now that you guys are in AirWatch, what I recommend is that you sort of send out an email to all the teachers and just ask en masse, what kind of apps do you guys want? So you can sort of fill out this form to just anything you can think of, really. Because even though you submit the form requesting these apps, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to push them on all of them. So you want to be as open as possible with how many apps you want. So, and I can just click to keep adding, so I can put as many apps here as I want. So you want to sort of fill out the ones that you have a good indication that you might be using them down the road. And then once you're done, you hit submit, and you'll be notified when that's all loaded in your environment. So that's just as a sidebar of how it is that these apps got here. So at some point for these apps, I would have submitted an app request form requesting Angry Birds Rio, and I got my confirmation, and now it appears in my AirWatch environment and ready for deployment. So, that was actually quite a long sidebar, but just getting back to the whole pushing an app thing, under the Purchase tab, again, we search for our school name in the top right-hand corner. We can also search for the school Trillium number. In the case of my test school, my Trillium number is 9991, and it'll just show me all the apps that apply here. So again, these were all here because of the app request form. So now, when it comes time to actually deploy an app to my smart group, I'm going to click this little pencil icon here with a square called Edit Assignment for that app, or I can actually even click the app name. It doesn't matter. Either one will bring up the window that I need to deploy an app. I'm just going to show, for example, Google Sheets. So we're going to apply Google Sheets to my iPad. Now I will say, when you first get here, what you're going to see is this big blue button here. It says Enable Device Assignment. As part of our instructions in the documentation, anytime you see that button, and it will be there the first time your app is opened up, you want to click Enable Device Assignment. If you do not press this Enable Device Assignment button, what will happen is your iPads will start screaming for an Apple ID. So by pressing this button, you're effectively telling the app that it doesn't require an Apple ID. So that's the best way really I can summarize it. So before you deploy any app, always press that enable device assignment button. I'm actually not going to deploy Google Sheets just because I wanted to show you this enable device assignments, and for future webinars I want to leave it there, because once you press the enable device assignment, you only have to press it once, and then it's changed like that for good. But you do need to press it, and it's very important. So I'm just going to switch back to another app. I'm going to use we'll do CP24. So we can see here that enable device assignment button is not there. That's because I had previously pressed it. And as a result, when I go to deploy this app, it's not going to require any Apple ID. It should just shoot right away over to my iPad. So to add the iPad add this app to the smart group, which contains the iPad, we're going to go down here where it says add assignment by, and then license code by smart group. So if we hover our mouse just over here, you can see that little sub-menu drops down. And by clicking that, it'll allow me to select a smart group. So we can see just by clicking that, this sort of select smart group text box came up here. And when I click into that text box, it's going to bring down a drop-down menu of my smart groups. So the one that we created was library cart. Again, another very important reason why to name your iPads and the smart groups something meaningful, so that when I'm in here, I know exactly which smart group it is that I'm applying this app to. I can select my library cart smart group, and I guess I should also mention that you can do multiple. So I can, for example, if I want to apply this app to multiple smart groups, so say I had the library cart and then I also had another cart in, I don't know, the computer lab, I could add maybe like my computer lab smart group by clicking that license code by smart group button down here and then choosing another smart group from the list. Just as an example there. So this would be me applying my app to multiple smart groups, and then those smart groups will each contain, their own X number of iPads in them. I'm just going to X out of that one there. So we're only going to apply it to the library cart, and when I add a smart group here, actually what I see is it tells me just briefly how many devices are actually in that smart group. So I see here under devices it shows that there's one, and as a result what I need to do is for allocated, I need to choose the correct number of allocations for that devices. So this is referring to licenses. So even though the apps are free, there is still a license for even the free apps. So they're free licenses. But what we do is whenever you request a free app, we give you roughly, I believe it's 500 free licenses. In this case, there's only 100, but mind you, this is our test environment, so we probably just undershot there. But for you guys, when you do request a new app, we give you 500 free licenses. And the idea is that you probably don't have 500 iPads, and you will never use the 500 free licenses. So when I'm choosing my allocated value here, it needs to be at least the number of devices in the group or higher. So in this case, if I have one device in my library cart smart group, I need to allocate at least one license here for that smart group. A better thing to do, though, is to actually overshoot your allocation. So let's say down the road I purchase 5 more iPads and they're going to go into my library cart. If I don't want to come back here and change my allocated value, I won't have to if I overshoot it. So, for example, even though I only have one device in the smart group, I might want to give myself a buffer for, the future. Maybe if I ever add any more in there, so I don't have to come back in here and modify every single app and increase the allocation value. So in this case, I'm going to put 20. So that would be a good example of, overshooting the value. So I have 20 licenses that I'm offering to my library cart smart group, even though it only contains one device. And we can actually see how many licenses are available on the left-hand side here. In this case, there's 100. By changing the value to 20, I can see that it changes now that there's allocated 20 and there's 80 unallocated. So that number should change right away. How long does it take, again, for apps to be approved after filling out the app request form? Did you say 8 to 10 days? Jacqueline, yeah, the app request form does show here 8 to, I think it says 10 business days. It says if you have not received a response for your app request within 10 days, or for any billing issues, please contact Teaching and Learning at apprequest@tdsb.on.ca. So it looks like there's a little bit of administrative overhead with that process. So before it used to be, I think it was like 72 hours, but they recently changed it to 10 days. Not entirely sure why, but just to give themselves the time it takes to actually deal with any billing issues. So getting back to the, sorry about that. Getting back to the app over here. Like I said, there's 100 licenses, and those were given to me because it's a free app, so I didn't buy 100 licenses. I have 100 licenses for free. I've chosen 20 to be allocated for my library carts test group, and I still have 80 left over. So if I have another set of 20 iPads that I want the CP24 app to be on it, I can go ahead and do it there. And that's the idea of that, is that you have you want to overshoot your allocation because you'll get 500 licenses for your free apps. So, but before we apply this app, there's actually some more settings as we scroll down. So this was just the actual assigning of the app to the smart group. But down here, there's also the assignment type. So the assignment type is basically going to be how it is that the iPad will make it over to, how the app will make it over to the iPad. There's really two types. There's auto and on-demand. By default, it's going to be auto. And effectively what that means is that when I click save, it's going to push that app right away, or rather attempt to push that app right away. The other option is on-demand. And on-demand means it's not forced. It's not going to push the app. It's going to offer the app to the user, and they can choose it from the catalog on the iPad. And let me just quickly show you on my iPad over here. So here's my iPad. This is what it looks like sort of out of the box, and that on-demand that I was referring to, you can see that right here is the catalog. In that catalog, what it does is it basically just opens up a web page, and this is where your optional apps will appear. Also, mandatory apps will appear here. So it'll basically just give you, from the device view, the apps that are supposed to be installed or can be installed. So I can see for Google Sheets, it shows right there install, which means that would be a good example of one that is optional. So that would be me coming in here and changing that assignment type to on-demand. So by changing the assignment type to on-demand, it'll appear in the app catalog. Let me just make that bigger. It's probably kind of small. You guys can't see that. It'll just come up here as an option to tap the install button on and push the app optionally. But I'm going to switch it back to auto, and we're going to leave the rest of the values the same. You don't have to worry about remove on unenroll. And then if we click save, what will happen is it'll take that app and it'll push it over to the device. So I'm just going to show you on the device side. Sometimes it does take a little bit for the app to push over. It really all depends on the network speed, or whether your device is online or not. Sometimes literally just opening up the device and going to a web page and hitting refresh sort of makes the connection stick, and then it'll push the app generally speaking, right away. It's not here right now, but I will show you as soon as I do see it on the iPad, because we do need to move along just because we're running a little bit low on time here. So that was pushing an app. So we can see that all the apps are loaded here. I can do that for as many apps as it is that I want. And again, I apply my app to the smart group, and then as a result, the apps will get it. If I submitted my app request form and I still don't see my app here, even though I got a confirmation saying that my app has been approved, I can click the Sync Assets button up here. It's kind of hidden, but the Sync Assets will force the AirWatch environment to do like a refresh. It says, please go check if there's any changes in my apps that are on my list here. I'm going to switch over to the Web tab. And the Web tab, sort of like apps, will push a web clip to the device. And a web clip effectively is, like I said earlier, it's just a bookmark. So for example, if I wanted to create a web clip, I will click the Add Application button. I will choose my platform as Apple iOS, because that's the only device that we have here. And let's say I wanted to create a, virtual library. I could get the URL for the virtual library. What is that? www.tdsb.on.ca/library, I believe it is. You know, I'm just going to put that link in there just for the sake of example. So sorry, let me just switch back over here. So for the URL, this would be the address that we want my web clip to go to. So I'm going to just put in www.tdsb.on.ca/library. And I can add a description. Optionally, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really show on the iPad in any way, shape, or form. And then I can go over to images. And images are where I would upload the icon. And the icon for the web clip is how it's going to appear on the iPad. So that web clip that I'm creating, in the case I'm doing one for the virtual library, I could choose the icon that's going to show. So I've already have a little image here that we use. It's the virtual library icon. And what it'll do is it'll upload it so that when I push this to my iPad, I'm going to see this icon appear. It'll say virtual library, and it'll basically take me to the URL that I specified here under details. So that's the images for the icon. And if I switch over to assignments, this is where I will assign my web clip to the smart group. So as we did with the app, we're going to take this web clip and apply it to a smart group. So I can just click this field here, and it'll come up again with my drop-down menu of my different smart groups. I know this is the one in my library cart, so I'm going to click the library cart here. And again, I could add multiple apps as I see fit here. And again, I have my two options of push mode. There's the on-demand or the auto. So on-demand showing that it'll be in the catalog, and auto being that it'll push right away. I'm going to choose auto just so that you guys can see it. Do not touch the exclusions option here. I'm not entirely sure what it does, but we're told not to touch it. And there's some more options down here under advanced where you can do like a full screen. So this will choose whether you want it to open up in full screen mode, because basically it opens up in Safari, the browser on the device. And if you choose full screen, it'll basically get rid of the toolbar at the top and stuff like that. And then there's the option of removable. I'm going to leave removable yes. You may want to choose no if you don't want anyone to actually remove this with a web clip. But just for the sake of demonstrating, I'm going to leave it as yes so I can show you that you can remove it by leaving the option as removable. Hit to yes. And if I click save and publish, this should push over to my iPad. Oh, sorry, there's one more intermittent screen here. Nothing to see here. It's just sort of giving you a summary view. I'm going to click publish. And that should be appearing on my iPad shortly. Let me switch back to my iPad. Oh, and as you can see, oh, there it is right away. Oh. So both CP24 and my virtual library have made it to my iPad through that. So like I said with the web clip, if I tap it, it basically opens up my browser, Safari, and it takes it to the URL that I specified. And also, because I chose auto, that's why they both pushed right away. Whereas if I chose on demand, it would show in the catalog. And also for the web clip, I did choose the option of removable. And as I can see, if I tap and hold it, I should be able to... Nope. Interesting. Okay. So that's not what removable means. Oh. Well, that's awkward. Okay. Could have swore that's what removable means. Maybe there's some sort of policy in place for that. So you're asking, can you remove apps as well from devices? So the apps that you see that come by default in AirWatch, because I'm actually going to show you how to remove the apps very shortly, so I'm glad you asked that because it's literally coming right next. But all the apps that come with your iPad, like FaceTime, Calendar, Photos, Camera, Contacts, Maps, those are default apps that actually can't be removed from the iPad. However, they can be hidden. But as of right now, they haven't opened the option to hide those default apps. They do intend on adding it in the future. It is an option in AirWatch. We're just sort of working out the complexities of enabling that for users. But for now, I'm going to say no, you can't remove or hide any of the default Apple apps. But any app that I apply to it, like in the case of my CP24, my virtual library, I can actually remove those. And it's sort of going backwards through the process of how I did it before. So if I go back to my Purchase tab, and let's say I want to get rid of my CP24 app from my library card iPads. I go back into my Purchase tab, same steps I did before. I search my school name or school trillium number. I'm going to find the app that I no longer want on it, and I can see I don't want CP24 anymore, so I click that. And I look at what smart groups is that app apply to, and I can see my library cart here. And if I want to remove it from my library card iPad, all I need to do is click this little X button over here. And what it does, it deletes the assignment. And by deleting the assignment, it's going to say right here, Deleting the assignment will uninstall the application from all devices belonging to the assigned smart group. So by removing the assignment, I'm also telling it to remove the app. So if I click OK, I can see that now CP24 is not assigned to any smart group, and by clicking Save, what should happen is eventually on my iPad that app should remove. Again, for the sake of demonstration, sometimes it doesn't go right away, particularly with apps. I think it actually went away. That was pretty good. There you go. Yeah, see? So by removing that assignment, I've also removed the app. So you can imagine how much easier this would be than how it was before, where you had to do it all through the App Store. Because we have this one interface and we can group iPads, I could push that app to 20 at a time, or I could remove it from 20 at a time. So that's really one of the key things about AirWatch, is adding and removing those apps. You search your app, you click the app, you assign the app to your smart group. It's just that easy. Moving along. So we showed you how to do the adding of a smart group. Same thing with adding the app and removing the app. We can do with web clips as well. If I go back over to my web tab, I can choose this little pencil icon here. And I can, same way, if I want to remove my web clip from my device, I just have to go over to this assignment tab and remove its association with my library cart group. So if I X that out and save and publish, hit OK. Basically what I've done is I've said this doesn't belong anymore on the library cart iPads. And then eventually what will happen is that virtual library icon should disappear. So we added an app, we removed an app, we added a web clip, and we removed a web clip. I think that is, just because I think we're running out of time, looks like we were at the hour mark there. That is the actual end of the webinar. Sorry, let me just bring back up here. So create the force. So if you do have any questions regarding AirWatch, we have a page on ServiceIT. It is serviceit.tdsb.on.ca/MDM, mobile device management. And that'll take you to our page, which is basically everything AirWatch. It's got all the documentation that contains basically the steps that I've done here for you today, and even some more. It contains the information on how to enroll your devices, and it's got an FAQ on how to go about purchasing, all that good stuff. So you can see that the link is actually in the description at the bottom of the video here. And of course, anything that you can't, do, or you're having some difficulties with, or you can't find the information for on the website, give us a call at the help desk, 416-395-4357, option 5. So with that, now, anyone who wants to stay a little bit later, I imagine some of you have to go, but if you do have any questions, I'm going to take the time now to go ahead and go through them. So, perfect timing, Ms. Schilling. Questions that might be outside of this webinar. Students create a video, for example, and want to send it to an email. Can this still be done? Yeah, not really. Yeah, it's a little outside of the scope of AirWatch, but it definitely can be done. I mean, I guess I could show you. Let me just really quick. So say I had my camera, and let me switch this around here. Woo. That's not what I want. So I'll do video. We'll switch. Hello, and I can record the video, and then when I'm ready to send it, you should just be able to go over to your photos. I can see my video is right there. Oh, sorry, let me make this bigger for you. Oh, sorry, I'm jumbling all around the screen here. This is a good time if you guys have any other questions too, because I got some time here to share with you. But just to go with your video question here, Ms. Schilling, I can see my video is right there, and if I wanted to share it, I could tap it, and then at the top right-hand corner, I think my app is. Oh God, look at that face. I think the app that I use to display the iPad is kind of bugging out whenever it goes into the camera. So let me just resize this window really quick for you here. Bear with me a moment. What is going on? There we go. Okay. So you couldn't see it on the previous screen, but there's a little share button in the top right-hand corner. And if you click that, it gives you the options of the different ways that you could share it. There's mail. Of course, with mail, what they would need is to actually have their mail profile loaded on the iPad, which I don't recommend. What I would recommend for sharing videos or moving around photos is I would choose to install the Google Drive app on your iPads. And then with the Google Drive app, you can share it through there. Now, I don't see it on my iPad right now as an option because I don't have Google Drive, but you could choose Google Drive as an app. It would show up here if I had it. And with the Google Drive app, it'll ask you to sign in. You could type in your, if you're a student, you would type in, first name dot last name at student.tdsb.on.ca, and it'll upload that to your Google Drive, and then you could share the link or you could share it in an email. I'm not sure about the delay on the video here, but you may still be hearing my previous answer. So if anyone has any other questions, now is a good time to ask. Anything and everything iPads and AirWatch. I'll just give you guys a moment to mull that over. Sorry, bear with me guys as I'm messing around here. I'm just going to... So are there any other questions? Give you guys a few moments here. Ms. Schilling, if you have any other difficulties with the sharing of an app, feel free to call us at the client service desk. I'd be happy to walk you through that in more detail. It's going to be a last call for questions. Anything and everything, let me know. If I had the Jeopardy song, I would cue it up right about now. Here we go. Is setting up AirWatch on approximately 60 iPads a lengthy procedure? So as part of our enrollment process with AirWatch, there are two options. There's self-enrollment and IT Assist. We at the client service desk are pushing for self-enrollment, but that might be for our own selfish reasons in that our field services team is pretty inundated in terms of the size, because the scope of getting our field services agents out to each and every school is a little bit cumbersome. So by putting you on the list for the field services to do it, it could take some time. It could take anywhere from weeks to months. The process of actually enrolling a device is not hard or difficult, I should say, but what it would require essentially is for you to round up all your iPads into one big group, and then effectively all you would do is wipe them. So if you can see the iPad that I have here on the screen, let's say this was an iPad that's not in AirWatch. What I would do is literally just go to Settings, Reset, and then there's an option here for Reset All Contents and Settings. You don't see it here because it's already in AirWatch and that feature isn't here. But on an iPad that's not in AirWatch, there's Reset All Contents and Settings. And all you're effectively doing is you're wiping the device. And by wiping the device, what's going to happen when it comes back up from having been wiped, it will prompt you to do the setup again. And part of that setup forces you to type in your school's 4-digit Trillium number as the username and password, and that puts it into AirWatch. So the actual steps of doing it, probably about 5 minutes per iPad. If you had all these 60 iPads lined up on a table and you went to Settings, General, Reset, and you wiped them all and did the setup on them all, it wouldn't take very long. You may even be able to get students to help you out. It's just that, obviously there is that whole idea of having somebody put aside to do that, which I guess could be a little bit difficult. So just look at the questions here. You can't remember your PIN already. How do I get a new one? Let me show you how to get a new PIN. So I'm just going to switch back over here to the AirWatch console. So let's say I forgot my PIN. If you see that your username at the top right-hand corner here, if you click your username, there's a Manage Account Settings. And if you click Manage Account Settings, what that'll do is it'll take you here. And you can change sort of your information. So in my case, you know, your email, the phone number, all that stuff. But if you go over to Security, this is where you would reset your security PIN. And basically what it does when I reset my security PIN is it's going to log me out. So now I've been logged out, but when I log back in, 3809, when I log back into the AirWatch console, it's going to prompt me to create my PIN again. So it's sort of like the first time I logged in. It's just telling me to create a new one. So it resets it in that, you know, you just create another one. So yeah, you just click your account in the top right-hand corner, and you go to reset security PIN, logs you out, log back in, and then you create a new one. Anyone else? Come on, this is too easy. I hope you caught that, Luis. Again, if you have any difficulties, you can always contact us at the client service desk. I can remote in and I can walk you through it. But of course, this video is actually, like I said at the beginning, it's recorded, and you can go back and watch this video as many times as you want, and basically, you know, go back and watch it. Now, I see here you said it is TDSB/employee number. Now, I don't want to get into the great debate about what's a slash and what's a backslash, but basically it's TDSB/ as we highlighted there in the chat. So the one above the enter key, not the one directly to the left of the shift key. So it's TDSB/ then your employee number. And I believe you should have access. Yeah, like that. TDSB/ and then your employee number. That didn't work for you? Interesting. It shows here that you're part of the EMM group for HG Alexander Community School, so you shouldn't have any problem with that. Maybe you're getting your network password wrong. I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. If you want, Louise, give us a call, and I'll be able to do it, because right now I can't really see from here. We'd have to like remote into your computer. Yeah. I have Isra right here. She's going to log a ticket to follow up with you and get you logged in there. So you should be getting an email shortly, Louise, about this, and we'll follow up with you and we'll get you logged in. Because, yeah, it should just be TDSB/ and then your employee number. Yeah, exactly. The password is the same one you used to log in the computer, same one you used for your email. Yeah, I'm not sure what to tell you. That's it. It's employee number and then your current network password. Any more questions? I know we're kind of overstaying our welcome here, 15 minutes past. So I think that is it. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending the webinar. Again, please visit ServiceIT/MDM. This is sort of our, sorry, this is the page here, our everything AirWatch. If you have any further questions, there's a FAQ. It's very detailed. It has everything you need to know, as well as we have training materials such as some videos, you know, how to enroll your devices, how to use the console, everything I covered here today and more. And of course, if any questions that arise that you can't find on the website, always feel free to contact us at the client service desk. So thank you very much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and take care. Bye-bye.